In Module 9, we will discuss the structures and the functions of the cardiovascular system. Here specifically, we will focus on the heart. Cardiac, that is, heart-related terminology, can be traced back to the Latin term cardia. Cardiology is the study of the heart, and cardiologists are the physicians who deal primarily with the functions of the heart. The basic organization of the cardiovascular system is a muscular pump and two circuits of blood vessels that are connected to that muscular pump. The muscular pump, of course, is the heart, and it is actually two side-by-side pumps. The right side of the heart receives oxygen-poor blood from the tissues. Here, that oxygen-poor blood is represented in blue. Also, we see that the right side of the heart is actually located on the left side of this diagram, because we are assuming that this heart is in anatomical position of someone that we are observing. So this would mean that the right side of their heart is on the observer's left side. The left side of the heart receives oxygen-rich blood from the lungs, and oxygen-rich blood in this diagram is shown in red. The two circuits of blood vessels are the pulmonary circuit and the systemic circuit. The pulmonary circuit carries blood to and from the lungs, while the systemic circuit carries blood to and from all of the other tissues and organs of the body that do not include the lungs. The heart and the associated blood vessels are therefore the transport system that moves blood to the lungs as well as to and from all of the other body tissues. The heart is the muscular pump that's going to put that blood into motion, and the blood vessels are the pipelines for carrying that blood. The average adult human heart is about the size of a fist and weighs between 9 and 12 ounces. However, we see that cardiac muscle responds to exercise in much the same way that skeletal muscle responds, because exercise will increase the size of the muscle cells. It won't increase their number, but it will increase the size of the muscle cells, and this is referred to as hypertrophy. The heart will also become enlarged in cases of chronic hypertension, which is chronic high blood pressure, because the heart is working harder to move that volume of blood, and so as a result it hypertrophies. The heart is located within the thoracic cavity, specifically the mediastinum, that is the space that is located between the right and the left lungs. It is posterior to the sternum, but anterior to the vertebral column. The heart vertically is situated between rib number 2 and the fifth intercostal space. So the fifth intercostal space is the space between ribs number 5 and 6. The heart rests on the superior surface of the diaphragm, and approximately 2/3 of the heart lies to the left of the midline. The heart consists of 2 receiving chambers and 2 pumping chambers. The 2 receiving chambers are called the atria. There is a right and a left atria. Collectively, the atria receive blood from the large veins that are returning blood from the tissues and from the lungs. Keep in mind that veins are always returning blood to the heart. The 2 pumping chambers are referred to as the ventricles. These are the right and left ventricles in the heart, and they function to push blood into the large arteries that will then carry that blood to the lungs or to the body tissues. Arteries will always carry blood away from the heart. So within the mediastinum, the heart is actually separated from nearby structures like the lungs by a tough membrane that's called the pericardium. It's also referred to as the pericardial sac. The pericardium, or the pericardial sac, is double-walled, so that there are 2 layers to this structure, and we'll investigate those now. The 2 layers of the pericardium are the fibrous pericardium and the serous pericardium. The superficial layer, which is called the fibrous pericardium, is very tough, and it contains very abundant, strong connective tissue fibers. This layer helps prevent the heart from overfilling, as well as protecting and anchoring the heart to nearby structures. The serous pericardium is the deep layer, and we'll see that it is folded in on itself. The serous pericardium is a much more delicate membrane that creates a fluid called serous fluid. One part of the serous pericardium attaches to the fibrous pericardium. This is called the parietal layer of the serous pericardium, And we see that the other part that folds in on itself rests directly on the heart muscle tissue itself, and this layer is referred to as the visceral layer of the serous pericardium, or it's also more simply referred to as the epicardium. The folding of the pericardium creates that fluid-filled space referred to as the pericardial cavity. The pericardial cavity is filled with the serous fluid that we mentioned earlier, and it produces the pericardium creates that serous fluid, and that serous fluid functions to reduce the friction as the heart beats within the pericardial sac. So here this image shows the pericardium in a fetal pig. Pericarditis is an inflammation of the pericardium, which is usually due to an infection. The inflammation roughens the surface, particularly of the serous pericardium, and it causes the heart to creak when it rubs against that rough surface. And it can also lead to pain that is located deep to the sternum. If the pericarditis is severe, excess fluids can accumulate in the pericardial cavity, which is referred to as effusion. And this excess fluid accumulation, or this effusion, can lead to a condition called cardiac tamponade. This is where the excess fluid actually compresses the heart, and it limits its ability to fill as well as to pump blood. The myocardium forms the bulk of the heart tissue. It is composed primarily of cardiac muscle cells, but it also has some elastic connective tissue and collagen fibers within it. So, of course, the cardiac muscle cells are going to be the cells that are contracting to pump the blood of the heart, but the elastic and collagen fibers, which are collectively called the cardiac skeleton, do not contract, but instead they help to anchor the cardiac muscle cells. They also support the valves of the heart, as well as supporting the large vessels that attach to the various heart chambers.